Okay, welcome back everyone to Roll Mangging for our Shadowrun campaign. Yeah, remember Shadowrun? It's been a little while. And enough so that a lot of us didn't really remember what was going on or kind of how to play, you know, because Shadowrun's kind of complicated. But we got back into it, so. Where we left off, it was like 2 days before the big job, Operation Man on Fire, the kidnapping heist. And so on Monday, we were going to meet up to hand off the car, hand off the taxi cab that they would use to kidnap, and go over the plan one last time, which was helpful since, you know, we kind of forgot. Luckily, I still have my whiteboard that has the entire thing written out, so. Because, hey, I'm the mastermind. And so, before we could get there, Lynx and Gug, you know, Ziggy and I, have been hounded by these nightmares night after night. And I guess today they got really bad. And so when we got up to kind of go out to go to Nacho's Mama's, both of us had a hallucination of some sort. And Ziggy's hallucination was that dead birds continued to fall out of the sky around him, just colliding with the ground. And so he like ducked for cover, and he was like, yeah, he had to like close his eyes in fear and shit. But then it was just like, and nothing was there, you know. Mine was a little bit worse, and could have been a lot more drastic. I had Gulk with me, and he did not see anything. This is only Gug saw this. As I'm walking out, I see like a carpet in the middle of the road. And Ren's like, you feel compelled to go check it out. And I'm like, well, of course I do. So, of course, I had to go check it out. And he's like, do you go look at it, or you go like, you actually go up to it? And I'm like, oh, I gotta pick it up and put it to the side. It's not supposed to be there. As if that was something Gug would do, but whatever. And so I go up to it, and I realized that it's not a carpet or anything, or a rug. It's a nest of spiders. And I'm like, okay, how quickly can I prime a charge of explosives? And so as fast as dwarfly possible, I cobble together some commercial explosives and just toss it in the hive of, you know, the nest of it, and just dive for cover and blow a big crater in our street. And I'm like, I run for the car. And as I'm in the car and I'm like trying to turn it on, I see that like out of the smoke of the explosion, the spiders are like coming together to form one giant spider. And I'm like, oh shit, get us out of here. And so I try to gun it. I don't gun it well enough, so I like spin out, and suddenly I'm facing the spider, the big spider. And so my plan was to drive headlong into it, charge at it, roll out of the vehicle, and detonate the explosives that I had put on the underside of the vehicle. Because that's what I do. I didn't get a chance to do that because the big spider charged at us and kind of exploded into the cloud of little spiders, completely blanketing the entire vehicle and blotting out any light coming in. This is nightmare fuel. And so my hand's still on the detonator button for the vehicle, because that was my plan. And Gulk is sitting there. He doesn't see anything, but he sees me like got like a detonator thing, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, Gulk, I gotta do this. I'll miss you, buddy. And he's like, wait! Because I was about to do it, you know. Because I feel that's probably what my character would do. He's very paranoid, and there's no fate worse than what is currently going on right now. And so, giant spiders and something, no, this is not what life should be. So, he'll detonate. I was about to do it. But he's like, wait, I'll solve this. And he takes out his puzzle box. And so, I was like, you have 10 seconds. And so, you know, he has times for one little quick solve. And he got a quick solve. All it was like a circle of trees. Like a perfect circle of trees appears around us. And that's when my character like snapped out of it, because he saw the trees, which means, you know, he saw past the spiders and then realized that the spiders weren't there. And I like hug Gulk and I'm like, you saved us! Saved us either from the spiders or from me blowing us up, either way. And so then I'm like, well, we're still blocked in by trees. And so he tries to use the puzzle box again to get rid of them. And he got, reader always answers yes or no questions truthfully. And so he gets that, and I don't see the trees disappear. And I'm like, Gulk, do you even know what you're doing? And he says, no. If Ovum heard that or something, he'd be like, yeah. So I'm like, oh, God damn it. So I go up to the base of one of the trees, and I attach some more explosives to it, and I just blow it cleanly off the street. And we just drive off to Nacho Mama's. So I think my hallucination was a bit worse. But, yeah. And so we all get to Nacho Mama's, and we go over the plan. And the plan, if you don't remember, is we are kidnapping this young girl, Susan Knight, whose parents make, you know, a couple million new yen per year. Wealthy people, wealthy school, all that stuff. And so Scar and Flo are going to take the taxi, and we found out that on Tuesday afternoons after school she walks home with her best friend and her bodyguard. And so that was our best bet for the kidnapping. And so they're going to just drive right up to them, jump out, knock out the bodyguard, grab the girl, throw her in the trunk, and drive to the warehouse. And that was it. Very simple. You know, in, out, you don't care about anything else going on, you keep your masks on, you keep your mouth shut, and just do what you need to do. And so they understood all that. And so I handed over the keys. And, yeah, that was pretty much it. And we went our separate ways. And that afternoon, Flo and Scar went back to Flo's place with the taxi. And what followed was probably, I mean, I'm going to just go ahead and say it. It's probably the worst metagaming I've ever seen in RPG. I mean, maybe Matt committed something worse, but off the top of my head, nothing comes up. It was just bad. Man. What happened was, Scar went into his astral form, and he went down to the car to look for explosives. And, yeah. I mean, there were explosives under the car. That was our contingency plan in case something went really bad. This wasn't my plan to kill Ed because I love to do it. This was just a contingency plan because we have contingency plans. You need to have them. And so this is something, you know, if they're like heading back to like, you know, to our surveillance spot and their cops are following them, yeah, I'm just going to blow the shit up. Because that's what my character would do. And so Ed just started floating around. He says, I'm looking for explosives. And Ziggy and I were just messaging each other furiously. Like, what is this shit? Ed, I love you, man, but what the fuck was that? Would that be anybody's first thought? I'm part of this job on this crew. I'm going to search the vehicle they gave us for explosives. Like, I mean, Ed, I know you're going to try and comment and say, well, you know, this was a new crew, and I don't completely trust you guys, so I just want to do all these precautions. And that's great. it's still pretty much completely metagaming from where we were standing. And I asked Ren, I messaged Ren privately, I was like, could I out metagame Ed and just detonate the explosives right now? When he was like he tried to like, he's gonna spend like 8 hours to take the explosives off. And I was like, could I just detonate them? You know? My character would have no reason to do it, but hey. And he said, sure. I didn't do it. Because I didn't want, I don't want to do that. But I could have, Ed. I could have. And so he didn't take it off. Eventually nothing came of it. I mean, I never detonated the explosive. Nothing happened. He didn't take it off and I didn't do anything with it. But yeah, that's kind of poor form, is what it is. Yeah. So that's unfortunate. Don't really like to see that too much. And so yes, then came the next day, and we got to our surveillance spot around 2:30ish, and you know, we were checking all our monitors. We got on the conference call, all that good stuff. And they were in the taxi. They drove, you know, the route, the planned route. They were driving along, and around 3:15ish, they saw the target. And so this was pretty much completely in their hands. And so they handled it about as well as I would hope that they would. They fired some tasers at the bodyguard. Scar used some magic to like cloud his mind or disorient him, some shit like that. And so he was pretty much useless. He fired off some shots, but they all went wild. You know, they completely missed. They grabbed the girl. They like he tried to like smash her comm link, but he basically just threw it on the ground, which is fine. It's not like I need it broken. You know, there's not like information on it. It's just I don't want the GPS tracking them. So they left that behind. They threw her in the trunk and they drove off. Pretty simple. Nobody followed them. They got to the warehouse. I drove to the warehouse. I took out 5 kilograms of explosives. I attached them to her chest like a suicide vest. And I went back to the surveillance group, or the surveillance booth. And I made a phone call to the Knight residence. And the missus answered, and I said, Mrs. Knight, if you ever want to see your daughter again, you'll do exactly as I say. And she was like, is this a prank or something like that? Which I don't think is what you would actually say in the situation. Because I assumed that the bodyguard had immediately called them. Like, this would be like half an hour later. I assumed he immediately called and said, you know, Sarah's been kidnapped by some, you know, by hooligans. I don't know. Been kidnapped at the very least. They didn't know about it, which was kind of strange, but who am I to say? And so she eventually transferred the phone to her husband, and I said pretty much the same thing. And he's like, well, what do you want? Money. And he said, what do you want with my stepdaughter? And I'm like, I didn't miss a beat. I was just like, you know, transaction. But I thought that was kind of interesting. It didn't really change much. But, I mean, I know why Ren did it, but I would have thought that would be mentioned in her file. I guess I didn't, like, you know, the fact that the file had financial information, but not one mention that, oh, you know, these aren't her birth parents, or anything like that. Or her birth name or anything like that. You know, I don't know. It seems kind of strange, but I'm not the DM, so I'll let him have it. And so I basically said that I want 1 million on a secure cred stick delivered to this address within 24 hours. And there are currently 5 kilograms of explosives attached to your daughter. If you contact the authorities, I detonate the bomb. If you contact outside help, I detonate the bomb. If you do anything to jeopardize the transaction, I detonate the bomb. 24 hours. And then I pretty much hung up. And so then it was kind of a waiting game. And luckily we had Scar. He was kind of useful. He went into astral form and went to their house. And he could kind of just listen in on their conversation. I guess it didn't really... Yeah, it helped a little bit. Yeah, it did. And Ziggy said later that I shouldn't have given the address right away. Perhaps he's right. That may have been an oversight. But I also assumed that no sensible parent would really do anything to jeopardize. You know, they would do exactly as they're told because you're dealing with some madman that you don't know that has your daughter's life in the hands of a button press, you know. Why would you be that stupid? You know, people are that stupid in movies and video games. I don't think anyone in real life would really do much. Anyways, so he was listening in, and basically what it culminated to was, as I'm kind of summarizing, the wife, the father, or the stepfather, all he wanted to do was just get the money, get the stepdaughter back, and be done with it. That's the safest way, and I was like, okay, you know, this guy knows what's up. The mother, on the other hand, stepmother, she wanted to contact the biological father. She said, you know, he has a right to know. Like, okay. And so I called up Mr. Knight again. And I said, your wife is attempting to contact outside help, and she's testing my patience, and blah, blah, blah. I eventually put it down. After she did contact him, I said, you have until midnight. So I shortened the deadline. And so I got a text message on the burner phone that I was using. I was using a proxy and a voice mask and all that. I was trying to be real sensible here. So I got a text message saying it was a private thing from Ren, and it said it was the monologue that Liam Neeson gives in Taken, and where he says, you know, I have a very particular set of skills and blah, blah, blah. And so I said to Ren, like, all right, I messaged back, good luck. And so, yeah, that'd be cool. But Ziggy was messaging me, and he's like, you know, should we be concerned about all this? And I'm like, well, any kidnapping that fails. Now, I'm not like a police, you know, detective in Mexico City or shit like that. So I'm only going off of movies. But any kidnapping that fails because there's too many chinks in the chain. You know? There's too many flaws. In other words, there's too many people. You know, weak people. People that give up information. We have a very short chain. And so, you know, like I said, if you've ever seen Man on Fire, which I do recommend, that's basically what he does. Or that's basically what Liam Neeson does in Taken. Is he basically hops from, you know, the smallest guy on the list. You know, the guy with the least information. And he keeps just bouncing up and up and up and up and up to get to the top, you know. And so it's a long chain of people that he can go through. Whereas we really only have, you know, 4, maybe 5 people, and they're all directly involved in the kidnapping, and he has a very short amount of time. I mean, it's much more difficult. This is my thought patterns. Okay. So I said, don't worry about it. We have to go as planned here. Now, you know, obviously at any point they could call my bluff and say, you're not going to do it. And no, I probably wouldn't do it. I wouldn't kill her. But I would probably take her and we would go to a different country or something. Yeah. I don't know how that would end up, but yeah, that's what I would have to do. Anyways. So we just kind of sat around waiting for a while. And at one point we contacted Golk. And we're like, you know, Golk, we need you, like, we need you here just for extra security. Because he's got an auto shotgun, he's impervious to, you know, physical damage, and he's a good to have. Problem is, he picked up a couple new bag effects during the session. One is narcolepsy, So he's like Rowan Atkinson in Rat Race. Second is at midnight every night he dies, and in the morning he resurrects. I think he got that before, somebody got that before. And so the problem being that our transaction is, I put the deadline at midnight. And so I assumed he'd get there at like 11:30. He got there at midnight. And so Golk just slumped in a corner and died. And so the guy arrives, Mr. Knight, by himself. No cop showed up, nothing like that. He shows up. He comes in, and I didn't give them really any instructions for what to do during the actual transaction. This is a problem that I have, both in games and in real life, where I assume people know exactly what I know. I think that pisses a lot of people off that talk to me, because I'll just start a conversation assuming that they know exactly what I'm talking about. And they really don't. And so there's probably a word for that I'm not really sure what it is. And so that's kind of the problem in doing something like Shadowrun, where I'm trying to be incredibly meticulous and have everything go perfect, which is not normally how I play RPGs. Shadowrun just brings that out in me. And so when other people don't do something in a job, in a heist like this, exactly how I imagined I would do it, I'm like, what the fuck? It kind of pisses me off. And so, yeah. So, that's kind of an issue. But they brought him in and Flo did all the talking, and he's like, we're going to mentally static your mind. It won't be painful or anything, and this is just a business deal. And I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? I messaged that to Ziggy. I'm like, what is he doing? He's like, oh my god. And so they were going to use chaos on him. And I have no idea why. As an extra precaution, like, it's just the one guy. Our precaution is the 5 kilograms of explosives that you're all surrounding. That's the precaution. So then he's like, all right, let's see the cred stick. And so he pulls it out and he's like, put it on the ground, kick it over to me. I'm like, oh god. And so he takes it and he's like, okay. And I'm like, I had to actually speak, because we're on a conference call. I had to like speak. I'm like, verify the funds. And so he's like, oh. So he plugs it into his comlink, and yep, sure enough, 1 million new yen. And so then they're like, okay, thank you, Mr. Knight. And they give him the key to the cuffs that are on the girl. And then he's like, okay, we're going to static you now. And so he tried using chaos, but he failed. So he didn't get chaosed. He was just okay. And so they grab Golk's dead body, and they pile into the car and they peel out of there. And so I had not deactivated the explosives yet. And so Mr. Knight was going to try and take them off. And so I could still, we're still watching on the cameras, And so I call him up, and I basically said, I wouldn't advise trying to do that yourself. I will remotely deactivate them once my accomplices are safe. And so I permitted them to leave, because I can just deactivate them for wherever. And so they got in the car, and we packed up at the surveillance booth. I had also primed the door with explosives, so if anybody opened the door, it would explode. But that never came into play, so I undid that. We packed up, we headed to an alley nearby, and I was on my motorcycle, and I was staying on my motorcycle just in case. We all met up in the alley. They handed over the cred stick, and I allotted out the funds to everybody's account. And so it's 150,000 to Flo, 150,000 to Scar, 350,000 to Lynx, and 350,000 to Gug. Job well done. at this point, as a player, I'm like, no, this is fucking wrong. Nothing happened. In real life, you'd be like, yes, nice. Me as a player, nope. Nope. It's all going downhill now. And so I'm like, as soon as the funds were gone, I'm like, all right, good job. And I peel out of there. And I send a message to Lynx as I'm driving away on my motorcycle. I'm like, I'm going to go to London. It was nice working with you. And so he's like, well, what about Gold? Don't you want to see him? You know, say goodbye to him? And I'm like, maybe if I'm still here in the morning. I probably wouldn't be. Fuck, I'll Skype him later. I don't give a shit. And so I was going to stay in a motel. And then I'm like, no, Ren, I want to take the red eye. I want, as soon as possible, to London. You know, anything. And so I go to the airport. Flo goes and gets drunk ass in a club. Like, just parties his ass off with all his new money. And I'm like, this is how you go to jail, by the way. Why don't you go buy a new car while you're at it? Nobody goes to jail that doesn't want to. And, yeah. Scar did not much. I think he changed his clothes and he, like, went to some public places and things like that. Lynx went back to his house. Yeah, he went back to his place. He went inside, and the whole living room was covered in, like, blood and limbs and shit like that. And he calls me up, and he's like, oh, God, all the blood at my place. And I'm like, why the hell did you go back to your place? And he's like, and I just hang up. I'm like, I'm done. I have to sever all connections. This is not good. My character's very paranoid. I think I mentioned that. And so this is like, he is shitting himself. It all went to plan, and like, he has money in his account, but no, you just, no. Maybe he'll be safe, or he'll feel better in a few months when he's in London sipping on some tea or something. Maybe. But, oh my God. Flo gets drunk, heads back to his place at like 4 a.m. A guy like fires a shot at him as soon as he walks in. He misses on purpose. And so the guy's like, Flo's like, this is my fucking house. You get the fuck out of here. Just imagine him shit-faced completely. And so the guy in the chair that's sitting there with his gun, he's like, you kidnapped my daughter! And so this is the biological father of the girl. And so a very odd fight ensued, in which the father didn't want to kill Flo, just wanted to, like, shoot him in the kneecaps. But Flo wanted to stab this guy in the throat. But he's incredibly drunk. And so basically just picture this drunk guy at 4 in the morning stabbing into his Easy Boy chair over and over, trying to hit this guy. And this other guy just trying to hit him in the kneecaps over and over. It was kind of hilarious. But it dragged on a little bit, and Flo, he had to go. So we didn't really see the outcome. It was probably not pleasant. Let's see. Yeah. Lynx was just like, you know, fuck this. And so he goes to the airport. Because he wants to get out of here too. He's done with this shit. So he goes to the airport with dead Gulk in the backseat. And he's going to get a flight to LA, I believe. Which is at 6. So he's just going to sleep in a parking structure until then. Okay, Gug, he goes to the airport. He just wants to get out of here as soon as possible. And I succeed on a perception test to notice that I think somebody is following me. And since I'm so paranoid, I'm almost sure somebody is following me. And so I like dump my comlink, my cyberdeck, basically everything I own, I dump it in a bin. And I try to lose the guy, but I can't. And so I go into a bathroom, and I just, like, wait in there for 10 minutes. And I'm just, like, pacing back and forth. I don't know what to do. I know what I should have done looking back, but I still thought I had maybe control of the situation. Like, maybe I wasn't really being followed. I don't know. And so Eventually, after 10 minutes, there's a knock on the door. He's like, you may as well give it up and come out here. I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, are there any vents around here? And so there was a vent in the ceiling. And so I tried to gymnastics my way up there, but I couldn't quite do it. And so suddenly I hear the door, you know, get pushed in, and there's hands on my ankles. And so I look down as the guy I thought was following me, and so I take out my little billy club and I try and hit him, but I fail and he drags me down. And so there I see that guy, and over there in the corner is Mr. Livingston Dell. And he's like, oh, were you trying to go somewhere? And I'm like, yeah. I was trying to take the express route. And then I'm like, alright, I quick draw my Derringer. And I roll, and I quick draw it. He's like, oh, okay, who are you shooting at? I'm like, myself. And so I rolled my quick draw, I rolled my pistols, I got like 4 successes or something, but the other guy ran forward to stop me, and he stopped me, and so I blew off like part of my cheek. And I'm like, no! Damn it! I can't even commit suicide. Yeah, I really wanted to, because that is a much better fate than being in the servitude of a dragon. It's not even slavery is what it is. It's worse. It's the worst fate ever. I tried, man. And I tried to wrestle it away from him to get the second shot off at my face, but I couldn't do it. He was too strong. And so I tried to, like, swing at him, and I was just, kill me! Ah! And Mr. Dell just placed a hand on my shoulder, and I passed out. And no. And so, yeah. So then, it was all pretty much Lynx and Gulk. Lynx is sleeping in the parking structure at the airport with Gulk. And at like 5:30, he gets awoken by a parking attendant who says, you can't sleep here. And so he lies to him, and you know, he says, you know, we're just waiting for our flight, and you know, my friend, he's fine, because he's been dead for like 5 hours, so he's fine, and we'll be going soon. And at 6, Gulk awakens, around 6, I think, maybe 1:45, and he awakens. And Lynx had texted Gug. Lynx texted Gug. I don't remember what he said. He said, like, are you in London now? Or he said something like that. And I didn't expect him to get any reply, but he did. He got a reply saying, like, oh, I'm sorry about all that. Yeah, I got us a flight out of here. And so Lynx was like, that doesn't sound right, because that's not something I would say. I would have been gone already. I don't give a shit about Lynx in this situation. I'd be gone. So, yeah, he's like, that doesn't sound like him. And so there was a conversation there over text. But it was something like, oh, you know, do you want to like meet somewhere? You want to meet at our usual place? And I was like, yeah, like 11 or something like that. And so he's like, do you want to talk to, are you willing to talk to Gulk or something like that? And he was like, yeah. And so when Gulk got up, Lynx was like, I think something's up with our buddy Gug. He just didn't sound, you know, it didn't sound like how he would usually be. And Gulk's like, huh. And so he tried calling Gug's comlink, and he got no answer. And so Lynx messages Gug, and he's like, you didn't answer your phone. And he gets a response that's like, oh, can't talk now, I'm all tied up. I'll talk to you later. I'm like, oh, okay. And so Lynx is like, yeah, I think something's up. And so Gug uses his puzzle box to try and solve this situation. And he got... yeah, I think... No, yeah, I don't know if there was a minor one there that doesn't matter, or if there wasn't. I don't know. But the major one that he got was 3 curses from a devil, which is one that was in my original 100 bag effects. That there was 6 effects of those. It was like 1 curse from a devil, 1 wish from a genie, 2 curses, 2 wishes, 3 curses, 3 wishes. And so 3 curses from a devil is really bad. That's not one you want. And so Ren was trying to figure out how to do this, and Ziggy's like, well, why don't I just do 3 bag effects? And I'm like, oh, genius! And so he rolled 3 bag effects. One of them was remove all curses that are currently affecting Reader. So it didn't apply to this one, but it did remove his narcolepsy and the dying thing and shit like that. The other one was Skynet Awakens. And this is one that, you know, Ren just put in there. And so, yeah, Skynet. Skynet is bad if it happened in our world. If it happened in Shadowrun's world, I can't even fathom how quickly things would happen. Because isn't it in the movies like it happened in like a day? Or like less than a day? Something like that? I don't remember the timeline. I remember it being really quick. That nuclear war just devastated everything. So we'll see how that goes. And the third and final effect was all soil, rocks, and minerals in a 10,000-foot radius disappear. And so I think I purposefully extended that radius because I thought it was more interesting. But basically, Ren just ruled that the entire airport and everybody in it is gone. There's just this flat plain of nothing where the entire airport for Seattle used to be. I don't know what that airport is called. The Seattle airport? I don't know. But it's all gone. Nothing. Including all the people. I don't know where they went, but they're gone. And so they're just like, shit. At this point, Lynx is pretty much done with this shit. And he's like... Gulk is like, well, I guess it's up to me to get Gug back. And Lynx is just like, sure, man. And so he drives him back to my old house, which I gave to Gulk. So he drives him back to that house to pick up his Iron Man suit. After he drops him off, he's like, I'm just gonna go on a road trip to Los Angeles. I'm just leaving this place. And he calls up Ruby. And he tells her that he's just getting out of town, come with me. And so after some convincing, she decided to just drop everything and go with him. You know, because they got some nice amount of money to live off for a little while. 350 grand, assuming they could get it there and survive. So yeah, they're gone. That's the end of that. Or at least they get like an hour out of town before we ended the session. And so Gulk got in his suit and he just started flying around. And he called up Mr. Dell, I believe. I don't know how he got his number. Or no, he messaged Gug's phone. That's what happened. He messaged Gug's phone. He's like, I don't care who picks up, just somebody pick up. And so Mr. Dell answered. He's like, I want my friend back and I want you to stop bugging us. And Mr. Dell said, well, I believe you have an artifact that could be of interest to me. And so he wants the puzzle box in exchange for my life and to leave them all alone forever. And Gulk apparently agreed to this, which is surprising. He must really like Gug. And so they're going to meet in 2 days to discuss and do this transaction. I don't know what's going to happen during that transaction. I can't imagine it's going to be pleasant. Because unless Gulk kills the dragon, unless he kills Livingston Dell, I am going to commit suicide the very first second that I can. Because no, in any other situation, I would prefer death. But if he can manage to kill the dragon, maybe there will be some relief there. But you're going to let me go in the hopes that this dragon with the most powerful artifact in the world is just going to leave us alone and leave the world alone? Hell no, man. That is just bad for everybody. So, if I'm conscious when this transaction goes down, I'm just going to yell at Gulk to kill this dragon. Use the puzzle box to slay him! Yeah. I was ready at a few moments during that session to just blow myself up or shoot myself in the face. And so, yeah, what was interesting about that session was basically that was the first plan that I've ever concocted that went as planned. I mean, the afterwards wasn't really connected with it. I mean, if you're just talking about the plan of kidnapping somebody and getting money, it went exactly as I planned it. And that's strange. That's really weird. It was cool and kind of unique, because I've never had that happen. And during it, while it was going on, Alex Johnson was like, you know, Flo, you know, he was like, oh man, I kind of wish something bad would happen. And I'm like, no. No. I'm like, you know, when you've done as many plans as we have, and you've played RPGs for this long, you usually have something bad happen. So it's a rare treat to have something go exactly as planned. And so the bad stuff came anyways, because it has to. And so, yeah. It's kind of a shit scenario. Assuming Skynet doesn't wipe out the planet, which, for my mind, it should. Assuming that Gulk can somehow kill the dragon, I guess, you know, I would continue as Gug. But other than that, I don't see it going too well. You know, I've got a backup character just in case, but sheesh. So yeah, that was really interesting. I think, you know, assuming that it does continue, you know, as is, or even if I switch characters or whatever, however it goes, I'm probably done planning heists. It's an awesome idea, but the problem is, it either goes exactly as planned, and thus it's not incredibly interesting, because, you know, the interesting part is either actually doing it, you know, in real life, which would probably be quite the rush, or enjoying the money, you know. And so for a game, you know, I agree, you want bad shit to happen. That's why it's interesting. And so that's one side of it, is you know, if it goes exactly as planned, then it's not the most interesting. But then if it doesn't go exactly as planned, I've pretty much just wasted all my time coming up with the heist. And so it's kind of just like, winging it is always better. And the other side is, as I said, you know, if I were controlling everybody, this would not be fun, by the way. But if I were controlling everybody's character, you know, it would all go down exactly how I want it to go down. It would not be fun, like I said, exactly like the first point. But when, you know, I plan out a heist meticulously and people are not fucking it up, but deviating, I get upset, because I like plans to go exactly as planned, but then I don't, so it's very strange, and for that reason I probably wouldn't plan another heist. I would probably just wing it, and I think that's funner for everybody involved. And so, you know, we did our big kidnapping, and it went how it should have, and 1 million nuan, that was a nice paycheck. Would have liked to have spent some of it. Yeah, so I don't know where we're going to go from here. you know, Ren's got stuff planned for the future, but I honestly have no idea what he could really have planned. He's got to somehow, you know, stop Skynet from destroying the world. I doubt that fit into his plans. I guess he could have planned for the dragon to kind of kidnap one of us and, you know, try to get his... I don't know. I don't know where this really could go. I mean, I don't know how far it could go. Seattle seems like not a great place to live anymore. There's a floating mountain. The airport just evaporated with, you know, however many people were in there. There's dragons flying around. Again, Skynet. Like, I don't know. Assuming, you know, we get kind of all past that, I would like to try, perhaps, how Shadowrun is supposed to be played. With, you know, like a professional team that has, you know, they're hired to do a job by, you know, somebody, and they got to break into like a corporate place. That's such a generic Shadowrun thing, but we haven't really done it. And so perhaps something like that at one point, as long as it's not for Livingston Dell, you know. And so yeah, that was our Shadowrun session. Rather exciting at the end. Yeah. So next week we'll be going back to Call of Cthulhu. And there's kind of a... not a debate, I guess. It's more friendly than that. A discussion about our plans for these 2 campaigns that we have going on. And so I would really love to get any feedback from you guys watching this. Your thoughts on, you know, what you prefer, just from like a role-managing standpoint. What is more interesting to you from between Shadowrun or this Call of Cthulhu stuff going on? Yeah, we'll definitely take that into account. You know, if I had to be kind of perfectly honest, I would say I'm definitely leaning towards Call of Cthulhu, even though I'm running it. You know, I enjoy the setting more, the lore more, I guess. That shouldn't really come as any big surprise. I've been reading a lot of Lovecraft. I only read one Shadowrun book, besides this one. But I think it's, well, for one, you know, Call of Cthulhu is much more simple, and so you're just kind of along for the story for most of the time. And you know, there's not really... Shadowrun is very rules heavy. Very rules heavy. You know, just doing like a simple fight between 2 characters can take, you know, 15, 20 minutes, as you're just constantly, you're rolling like 12 dice at a time, and you're checking all these numbers, and, you know, even when I was first reading through this book, I was like, man, this is really complicated shit. And it's supposed to be. The Shadowrun is about, you know, these intense gunfights and, you know, very meticulous rules and mechanics and things like that for when you're going through all these corporate places, and you want it to be kind of rules heavy, I guess. Whereas Call of Cthulhu is very much just about kind of going along in the moment and, you know, just being intelligent in the situation, and a lot of Call of Cthulhu is much more based on role-playing than Shadowrun, I think, could be. You know, Call of Cthulhu, you're playing these really interesting, you know, kind of unusual characters for a game. You're playing, you know, antiquarians and doctors and librarians and shit like that, professors, and then you add in kind of the whole sanity thing, and you put in, you know, these kind of mental effects and phobias and all that kind of stuff that you're all just role-playing. You know, there's not really rules for anything. You know, if that were in Shadowrun, if there were phobias, there might be phobias in Shadowrun, actually, now that I think about it. It'd be like, you know, take a -2 dice penalty to blah, blah, blah. You know, that shit's not in Call of Cthulhu. It's just there for role-playing. And so they're really completely different games. But I don't know. From that standpoint, I prefer the kind of role-playing to the rules-heavy. Shadowrun definitely has its moments where it's really just crazy fun. But yeah. Like, you know, you can have an allergy, but then, you know, you got to deal with the severity of the symptoms, how common the item is. You know, if you take one die from their resistance test for each stage of severity for the allergy, and blah 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 blah. You know, it's just, that's kind of what I'm saying. Two completely different games. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with continuing to play Shadowrun, but if I had the choice, you know, each week, at least at this point, I'm probably going to vote for Call of Cthulhu. Now, I think Ren mentioned it, and he is right. You can get burned out from DMing too much. And so, I'd be fine with alternating every once in a while. Yeah, I'm definitely no stranger to burnout, believe you me. You guys know all about that. But this is a little bit different, as this is all kind of written out for me. So, you know, it's not like I have to... Usually my problem with burnout is I tend to write out everything that I want to be in the session. Whereas I already have that all done for the end of the campaign, which could be, you know, a year and a half from now. So that's a huge relief off my shoulders. But, you know, I do enjoy playing a lot. So, I don't know, I could see doing, you know, 2, maybe 3 of Call of Cthulhu, and then going back to Shadowrun for 1, and then, you know, 2 of Cthulhu, or something like that. I could definitely see us doing that. But, you know, it's not just up to me. Ren is also DMing. He's got stuff planned for Shadowrun, so he gets a definite say in what we do. The other players, and that's another thing, is for Shadowrun, it's just kind of the 4 of us players. Call of Cthulhu adds, you know, Reefly and Olaf in the mix, which, you know, more players is always kind of fun. And, yeah. Yeah, Call of Cthulhu is something pretty much anybody can just pick up and get right into. It's not complicated at all, whereas trying to get them into Shadowrun would be, you know, if you don't read a bunch of this book or have it all kind of explained to you, it's kind of overwhelming. And so, yeah. So that's what I'm saying, is I'm leaning towards more Call of Cthulhu than Shadowrun, but I am definitely fine with playing Shadowrun from time to time. But I would love to hear any of your guys' feedback on the situation, what you guys like to hear about, crazy stories and stuff like that. I mean, we're going to play Call of Cthulhu no matter what. It's just how often compared to Shadowrun or something. I can promise you that there is a lot of crazy stuff to come in Call of Cthulhu. I've read the majority of the campaign, and it's... yeah, there's some epic stuff. But, you know, Shadowrun has Skynet and dragons and shit, so... yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps up. Yep. Yep. So, yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts on the role Mangging situation, and next week we'll be back with Call of Cthulhu craziness as we get this whole new team together, and they got to decide where they want to go. You know, there's zombies in a basement. Alright, so my name is Mang. This has been Role Mangging for Shadowrun, and I'll see you fine folks next week.